Hello and welcome to our Lakeside Chat. We are David Wofford and Katie Noonan, co-chairs of the Rotary Nature Center Friends. And we're so happy that you can join us tonight.
As we begin our program, it is important for us to acknowledge that we are on stolen land, that Lake Merritt is part of Ohlone territory. We hear now from Corinna Gould, spokesperson for the Confederated Villages of Lishan and co-founder of Segura Te Land Trust.
Good afternoon, relatives. My name is Corinna Gould. I am the spokesperson for the Confederated Villages of Lishan. We are here today at what most folks think of as Lake Merritt. We are in the territory of Huichin. Huichin is actually a territory that encompasses 6 Bay Area cities: Oakland, Berkeley, Alameda, Emeryville, Albany, and Piedmont. And this was a place of abundance. I'm so happy that people from all walks of life that now come into our territory can enjoy this beautiful place that my ancestors have enjoyed since the beginning of time. My relationship to the land that I have been born to, raising my children and grandchildren here, has been to tell the story, the truth of what happened on this land before other people came here. I'm hoping that as we begin to learn these lessons of fires in California, the pandemic that's happening, that human beings come back to living in reciprocity with the earth.
Thank you, Corinna, for that powerful message. So true today as it was when we filmed that in 2020. So thank you. It's great to see all of you here tonight, to see our old friends coming back again, and also some new friends. For both old and new, I would like to introduce ourselves. So our organization is Rotary Nature Center Friends. We are an independent 501c3 nonprofit since 2021, providing online and in-person programming for all the people of Oakland at Lakeside Park. We engage the community in real science and in stewardship activities, bringing nature and people together in the heart of downtown Oakland to steward the nation's first wildlife refuge, the Lake Merritt Wildlife Refuge. The focus of our activities are community science and environmental science. And if you would like to know more about this, I would direct you to our website, which will come up in the chat eventually. We involve the community in water testing, monitoring plankton, and also looking at biodiversity, monitoring plants and animals and invertebrates. We build community and understanding of the natural world we live in through serving intergenerational local community people, and including primarily kids of color in Oakland from both private and public schools. We work with organizations like New Voices Are Rising and the Youth Employment Partnership, Team Oakland, with long-standing commitment to serving our diverse community. We want to educate everybody about environmental impacts that affect marginalized and low-income people, as well as everyone, through the window of Lake Merritt. To that end, we have gathered together a board of directors with a lot of talent and experience in teaching, in natural history, in interpreting natural history to the public, and in conducting science. So we are really excited about what we are planning to do and are on our way to accomplishing. We would like to announce tonight that we received a scientific collecting permit from the Department of Fish and Wildlife for a project called Lake Merritt Education and Scientific Monitoring. This will allow us to bring the public up close and personal to some of the invertebrates and fish that are in Lake Merritt that are protected from people handling, catching, etc. by our wildlife protection laws. We will be following strict rules and reporting when we do these activities, and we're real excited to be able to start that soon. In keeping with our celebration of East Bay Regional Parks, one of the areas of monitoring and exploration is the fish of Lake Merritt, which have undergone changes that we can observe since the 2022 fish kill in the lake, where most fish were killed and have slowly come back. We're hoping to celebrate in the coming with a visit of the East Bay Regional Park's mobile fish exhibit. So that's in the planning stages. Thank you. So as we get ready to introduce Bart to you, I would like to bring in just for a moment Lila Aru, who is one of the people who helped take care of Hank, the disabled American white pelican who has been at Lake Merritt since 2004 and was the subject of our program last month. And she is going to tell us what the pelicans are doing now. Can you give us a short update, Lila?
Sure. Hi, Katie. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So interestingly enough, we've had a slight change with Hank as of this week. I check in on her every day and see how many of her white pelican friends are still in town, whether or not she comes in to see me, or the other person who takes care of Hank is Stephen Summers. And this past Wednesday, I was doing my normal route, and she beelined it straight to me with a white pelican friend swimming alongside her. And that was an indication that she was perhaps not getting enough to eat from the lake on her own. And so yesterday and today, I met with her and was able to connect, and she ate quite heartily. So what that means to me is that she may not be able to get enough to eat from the lake right now, possibly A, because there's not enough fish for her, or B, she doesn't have enough friends in town so that she can fish communally with them. As most of you may know, white pelicans feed collectively, similarly to dolphins, where 10, 20 of them get together and they'll push the fish that they find towards a wall, or they encircle them, and then someone gives a signal and everyone dips their bill in and grabs the fish. Hank can't do that on her own to be able to find the 3 to 5 pounds of fish that she needs to consume every day. So I've kept the Oakland Zoo notified of this change in activity with Hank, and they have fish ready for us to pick up, and there's no concern on that part. The last thing I'll mention is many of the birders who bird around Lake Merritt, not just myself, have been noticing that there are flocks or squadrons of white pelicans flying above Lake Merritt, anywhere from 10 to maybe up to 30. And they circle, but they're not descending and landing at Lake Merritt. Again, this is supposition, but my guess would be that they're not coming in because there isn't enough to eat or to sustain them. At the moment, if anyone's curious, Hank had around 10 to 12 white pelican friends that were very steady, staying with her for several weeks. And as of last night, she had 11 visitors with her. However, this morning when I met with her to feed her breakfast, well, more like brunch, it turned out she only had 5 remaining friends, white pelicans. So I'm hoping that they'll return this evening. If they do, again, that's an indication they're not finding enough to eat at Lake Merritt, but they're finding Hank charming enough to stay with her over the night. So we're keeping our eyes open on that, and we are hoping to get more people to sign our online petition so we can indicate the community's interest in keeping Hank safe and being able to feed her in the safety of the bird yard.
Thank you, Lila. That's a fascinating story to be continued.
Definitely.
So really, this is a story that's played out at Lake Merritt now for what, 20 some years. And it's really remarkable the options that you've been able to make monitoring Hank and the activity of her bird, American white pelican companions. I'd like to let everybody know that the San Francisco Chronicle is doing an article about the story of Hank, and that will be on their website on Sunday morning. So we'll again put that link in the chat. Check in and see what how this story is going to be enjoyed by people throughout the region and stimulate more discussions, I am sure. So thank
Absolutely.
you so much.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you. And I might mention a picture of the pipeline swallowtail was done by Lila. She's an amazing photographer. Okay, so anyway, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. We're going to really revel in the splendor of native plants and the knowledge that's been accumulated and that it remains to be studied and appreciated and enjoyed. So I'd like to take a moment now to introduce our special guest, Bart O'Brien, the manager director of the East Bay Regional Park's Botanical Garden. Anyone who has ever been there has been charmed and affected by the incredible space and just the amazing wealth of knowledge and just the peace that you can find up there in the Botanical Garden. I will share, there's so much information to share about Bart. He's a plant explorer. He has gone all over California and points beyond, searching out native plants in their native locations. He has published books and given talks and received wonderful awards for his work, keeping the native plants remembered, taken care of, and better understood as we move into a period of climate change and increasing population and land use change in California. Such valuable information. We're really excited to have you here, Bart. Are you ready to keep going? And please let me know if there's something I left out that you would like to bring up.
I'm delighted to be here and starting to share my screen. Hope everyone can see that. And as it says, 84 years of conservation and horticulture. The garden has been around basically since the beginning of the park district. Some of the oldest plantings date back to the mid-1930s, but it wasn't formally designated as the Regional Park's Botanic Garden until January 1st of 1940. That's why we're technically 6 years younger than the district overall. And so I wanted to start with just a few images, overall images of the garden. And again, it is a beautiful, beautiful place to visit. All of the plants are native to California and the California Floristic Province, which I'll explain in a moment. And we have the world's best collection of manzanitas, and we also have one of the most complete collections of California's conifers as well. Again, California has a very diverse flora. This is part of the Southern California section. And the garden is interesting at all seasons. This is in the middle of winter in the Southern California section, and you can see the lichens outlining the branches of the tree in the background. And even at this season, there are plants that are in bloom in the garden, 365 days of the year. And as you all know, California itself has one native palm. That's it, the California fan palm. But within the floristic province, there are two additional ones. One from Guadalupe Island and off of Baja, and the other from the Baja mainland that occurs within 9 miles of the California border. So I don't have too many slides like this, but again, it's just to let you know that although the garden is in the Berkeley Hills, we're actually in Contra Costa County, but we're in the Berkeley zip code. It's quite an interesting spot. And that much of the construction that was done in the Botanic Garden was done by the Work Progress Administration from the mid-1930s to the through the 1940s, pretty much, and that our staff is 7.x86 full-time equivalents, and you can read who they all are there. It's a small dedicated staff to the garden. We get a lot accomplished for such a small amount of people. But as this also says, the staff's work is greatly extended by our numerous dedicated docents, volunteers, and friends. We certainly wouldn't be able to do everything that we do accomplish without everybody. This is really just to show that although when people think about California, we typically think about it as the state of California, but worldwide, it's also a unique space biologically. And it's referred to as the California Floristic Province. I'm going to use this arrow, which is starting down in Baja, and that from a biological standpoint, the California Floristic Province is this. And many people also include this and up into southwestern Oregon. So the rest of the state is the deserts, the Sonoran Desert and the Great Basin Desert. So those biologically are completely different from Floristic Province, California, which is really the Mediterranean climate part of the state, which always includes northwestern Baja, and which most people consider includes southwestern Oregon as well. And Mediterranean climates, as you all know, because you all live here, cool, wet winters, hot, dry summers. And the summers seem to be getting hotter and drier all the time. Certainly over the lifetime of the Botanic Garden and some of the retired staff that say that the garden used to be fog-bound most of the summer. And now we very rarely have ground fog at the garden during the summer. It's been maybe around 5 days throughout the whole summer since I've been at the garden for the past 11 years. And the plants of Mediterranean California are drought-adapted plants for the most part. And those classic adaptations are to be annual, to be a succulent, to be a geophyte or a bulb, corm, tuber, etc. And the trees, shrubs, and perennials typically have evergreen leaves that are small, leathery, aromatic, hairy, and or sticky. All of those various attributes are to control, principally to control leaf temperature so that the leaves don't bake while photosynthesizing. This is the garden as it is right now. And this is from our brochure. We'd been working on getting this brochure redone since I arrived in 2013, and it just was last year that it finally, all the pieces fell into place, and it now exists. The one thing that is not on here that we're actually celebrating at the garden tomorrow, and again, if you see the arrow over here by the north arrow that it's moving around, we actually have just added a new path that goes basically through this part of the garden, which never had a path through it, and which joins up with the path that ends at the bottom of the garden's part of Wildcat Creek, which has always been just a dead end. Now you can actually go all the way back up to the rainforest and the giant sequoia grove very easily. That trail opens tomorrow evening officially. But this is the whole garden as it exists. Our parking area over here at Camp Oaks, our visitor center, Juniper Lodge and the plant sale area, the glass house, the gardener's office, the gardener's nursery, and then all the numbered areas. Whoops, I'm not sure how that happened. What happened? Okay, I guess something happened here. And this is how the garden relates to the state of California. Everything in the garden is color-coded. So you can see the Sierra is this part of the garden, the redwood forest area, this part of the state, the rainforest all through here, which is this, Klamath Siskiyou up here, Klamath Shasta Siskiyou, etc. Southern California, Channel Islands, Franciscan, and Valley Foothill. And you can see the garden was set up that way in 1940 by James Ruth. And you can see how his concepts back in the late 30s, early 40s, basically correspond to how the Jepson Manual, the state's current exhaustive floristic treatment of the state, corresponds to their geographic subdivisions. So the Sierran, this is our Valley Foothill area, that's the valley, the Franciscan zone, the rainforest area, etc. So it's really quite amazing that in the 30s and early 40s, the Ruth's concepts of breaking down the state worked so well with how the state is currently biologically divided. And just another view of the garden. Some of this has, well, the garden is always changing, although most people don't really notice that terribly a lot. You can see a lot of changes due to our hotter weather. But a few things that I wanted to focus on were our conservation collections. And you can see here the entire flora, all of the plants that are actually native to the state. According to the Jepson Manual, there's 6,502 different types of plants that are naturally found here. And those are in 185 plant families. At the garden, we have about half of those, or a little over half, 3,600 different kinds of plants in 130 of those families. Of those plants that we have, over 70 of them are federally listed, over 95 are state listed, and 715 of them are listed by the California Native Plant Society as rare or endangered at varying degrees. And we also have an additional 202 taxa that the Native Plant Society considered for listing, but rejected for a variety of reasons. Some being their taxonomic issues, some being that they're more common than people think, and so on. But it just gives you an idea that if we have 715 or, well, 900 rare-ish plants, and we have 3,600, it's over a quarter of our plants at the garden are very rare. I do want to just share with you a few of the our rare plants. As was mentioned in the questions at the beginning, the Franciscan manzanita. This is actually material of the Doyle Drive specimen that was discovered by Dan Glusenkamp while driving across the Golden Gate Bridge and exiting at Doyle Drive as the landscape was being cleared for the redo of that exit from the freeway. And because the plant had been extinct in the wild since the 40s, it couldn't be listed as an endangered species because it was already gone, according to the government and the legalese. But when Dan Glusenkamp discovered this, growing, although it was in sort of a median along the street, it did enable the plant to get listed as an endangered species 3 years later. And the Botanic Garden has always had, for a long time, these collections of Franciscan manzanita that James Roof had done from the wild, the last wild location in San Francisco, which was at the Laurel Hill Cemetery. And these were planted in the Botanic Garden in 1947. And they continue there today. And we continue propagating these things, these plants, vegetatively. So they are exactly the same thing that Roof collected and that Dan Glusenkamp saw. And also this one that Lester Roundtree, the very famous native plant gardener out of Carmel, she had also gotten a collection of Franciscan manzanita, and her quote is, "She gathered it ghoulishly in a gunny sack from the Laurel Hill Cemetery," and that James Roof collected it with her permission from her garden in 1971 as a rooted layer, and we've kept it going at the Botanic Garden. Since the plant is now listed, as many of you know, the federal government, particularly the National Park Service, has been reestablishing a restoration planting of it at the Presidio. And they've been using the Regional Parks Botanic Gardens collections to grow cuttings from our plants to repatriate to the city and county of San Francisco. Oops. Also, just for more context, the Regional Parks Botanic Garden is one of the founders of the Center for Plant Conservation, a nationwide organization. And we're also one of the founding members of the statewide California Plant Rescue, or the CAPER initiative. And as part of CAPER, the Botanic Garden has primary responsibility for a number of plant species. And what we're particularly to do as part of our responsibility is to make genetically representative seed collections and deposit them in 2 different long-term seed banks, one of which is in California and the other is in the state of Colorado. And these are some of the plants that we are dealing with. And then this is some of our actual work. On Sobrante Ridge, we collected seeds from 59 different individuals. Each one is documented. As you can see, Ben here, this was during the pandemic, so you'll see people with masks. He's indicating a 4 and a 2, or a 5 and 2 for number 47, and 5 and 1 for 46. Each plant was photographed separately because with these large manzanitas, some of them do layer, and it's hard to tell where one specimen ends and where another one starts. And then I just did this interesting thing because manzanita fruits are hard and woody, the seed block, and that it can all be fused into one piece, or there can be individual nutlets. And so here we were able to determine that they're 3.5, so 3.5 nutlets per fruit. And you don't know how many individuals that represents within that fruit. Manzanitas are quite fascinating organisms. It's a whole other talk. And that's Liz Bittner on a different part of Sobrante Ridge on the Manzanita Loop Trail, indicating on her, or on the left is number 18, and on the right is number 19. And we collected seeds from both individuals. Everything, of course, is done with permits. This is also a federally listed plant. It's a hemiparasite, which means partially parasitic on other plants. It's a little short-lived annual, and it's at Point Pinole. 4 areas were collected for a total of around 1,200 seeds. And there's one of our staff standing out there in the middle of the area where the plants are. It's very kind of interesting that there's acres and acres and acres of this kind of looking of habitat, but very, 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 very few actual locations where the plants occur. Another one that we deal with is Arctostaphylos densiflora from the California Native Plant Society's Vine Hill Preserve population. This population is being affected by plant diseases, Phytophthora, which is plant destroyer, is what that name translates to. And that working cooperatively with Amy Patton of CNPS, we were given these different clonally collected seeds to clean and package, etc. And again, each one of the individuals is located and GPSed and mapped and so forth. Another one of ours is Arctostaphylos imbricata from San Bruno Mountain, and only known from San Bruno Mountain. We've had this at the Botanic Garden for years and years and years, many years. It's a low-growing manzanita, usually topping out at about knee-high. And this, again, is just some of the mapping that was done and which areas we collected plants or seeds from. And again, that's just sort of the various sorts of documentation that we do when we make these caper collections. This is another kind of interesting story. The Montara Mountain manzanita is known only from Montara Mountain, plus up until 1965, there was one individual that lived on San Bruno Mountain. Then there was a huge catastrophic fire, and because it doesn't have a basal burrow, and neither does Arctostaphylos imbricata, all of them this one plant was completely gone. But subsequently, more individuals germinated after the fire, which is very typical for manzanitas. And so there were all these different ones up on San Bruno Mountain that we also collected seeds of while we were there doing the imbricatas. The real interesting thing about this is that the Botanic Garden maintains the original germplasm, living germplasm of the 1965 plant. The question has always been, was that one plant a founder that somehow or another got to the mountain and grew, and then all of these existing ones today would relate back to this one? Or was there previously, decades and decades ago, a lot of Montara manzanitas on San Bruno Mountain that just died out over time and left behind a seed bank that then germinated after the fire? With DNA methods and so on, one would be able to answer that question, but so far nobody has. But again, it could be done because we do have the original living material of the 1965 plant. And this is how we keep it going, just with cuttings. That's its accession number, 65.009. And then it was done with 8% woods rooting hormone liquid, and the cuttings were wounded. It was done on November 18th of 2022, and 10 cuttings were made, all of them rooted, by the way. And that's how they look like coming out of the cutting flaps. No, we don't deal just with shrubs. We also deal with a number of extremely rare annuals. This is Clarkia imbricata. Many people know Clarkias, the farewell to springs wildflowers. Clarkia imbricata has leaves that are very narrow and overlapping the stem and each other. That's called imbricate, sort of like shingles on the top of a roof. The Botanic Garden has had ongoing populations of this plant, just reproducing themselves from seed for many decades. And so I had one of our ISAs collect one pod from each plant in one particular year and send them off to a long-term bank, seed bank, because this plant is now essentially extinct in the wild. There are a couple of restoration plantings of it that exist, but our plants are just as valid of a restoration planting as any other. And since ours are from a botanic garden, if someone were to run experiments on how to grow it, how to increase it faster, they should be working with plants from our collection rather than plants from the wild. Or that's my opinion. Then I wanted to switch gears for the last 10 minutes and talk about some of our horticulture. Because again, the Botanic Garden is all about growing plants, not just rare ones, but many just beautiful plants for your garden. This is the Baja sage, Salvia cianopeplica, which flowers over many months in the spring, oftentimes starting in May or March and going through May and June. One of the longest seasons of our salvias. or sages in flower, and beautiful gray foliage. It has among the biggest individual flowers in the California sages. Only the thistle sage is bigger flowers, and it's very easy to grow. And you can see by this verticillester or flower cluster, it's very dense with lots of buds, so that's why they bloom for so long. Very easy, full sun, and fairly good drained soil. Another manzanita that goes way back in our garden's history. This was actually the type specimen of Arctostaphylos edmundsii variety parvifolia that got named after one of the garden's retired gardeners now, Bert Johnson. It is one of the most beautiful and easily grown in the Bay Area manzanitas. It's very low growing. It branches a lot, so it's very dense, and usually only gets to be about a foot tall with some time, and very low spreading. So an excellent small scale ground cover. But it's also the type specimen for variety parvifolia. For Monodendron decumbens, this is one of our Center for Plant Conservation plants. It's a very low-growing, extremely desirable garden size, small garden size flannel bush. It can have these very red-orange flowers or yellow. It's only found really in one location, Pine Hill in the Sierra foothills, and it's listed. The garden has always had a number of them out in the garden. And again, it's fussier. Well, all Monodendrons are relatively fussy about summer watering or too much water. But if you can grow it or get it and grow it, it is a spectacular plant. Usually only about 3 feet high or less. This is actually a fairly recently described plant. This is only known from the Tejon Ranch in the Tehachapi Mountains, where it's found growing on some limestone outcrops. We're the only botanic garden or only place, period, to have it alive outside of its native habitat. We have 2 plants of it that are planted in 2 opposite parts of the botanic garden, because it is very rare and we didn't want them to be too near one another. But what we've learned about this species is it doesn't self-pollinate. So, and the plants typically bloom at different times in the garden. So we've never been able to get any viable seed off of it. But it is a spectacular small plant, and it seems to be relatively easy to grow. So hopefully that's something we'll be able to get some more seeds or more plants of it and be able to introduce it more widely. The garden's also long been known for its collection of lilies, and that we've greatly expanded the number of lilies that the garden grows. Because of the interest of one of our gardeners, Ben Anderson. This is the lily, though, that we've had the longest amount of time, the ocellated Humboldt lily. These are enormous plants, up to about 9–10 feet tall, and can have as many as 75 flower buds, or sometimes even more in the wild. From Southern California, it is a plant that typically will just grow one stem, and rarely will the bulb divide and do more than one stem. But in certain parts of the garden, we have many of them planted, so they make a very nice effect when sort of bunched. But also, because we grow so many different lilies, we also get hybrids. And so this one got named a few years back, Tilden Botanic Garden. And it's actually a hybrid between the Humboldt lily and the leopard lily. From the Humboldt lily, it got the sturdier flowers and larger flower size. But from the leopard lily, it got the ability to clump and produce more stems. So it's a much bigger looking plant in the garden. We sell this usually at some of our spring sales or fall sales when we've divided some or grown a bunch from bulb scales. I don't think we will have any at this year's sale. Our fall plant sale's coming up on October 5th, Saturday, October 5th. Put that on your calendar. That's a close-up of the flower, as well as just a different view of the original plant. Very nice, very showy. And then I wanted to talk about some of the horticultural tricks that we do that enable us to grow more plants or many more difficult plants. One of them is our crevice garden, which is one of our newest features. This was a mock-up done by Michael Euler, our Sierran section Botanic Garden gardener. And he did this as sort of a mock-up of what a crevice garden could look like. And so during the pandemic, he actually built it. And there's 2/3 of it. And there's another piece off to the right that you just see a small piece of. And this, whoops, that was it in the winter. And so you don't see a whole lot of growth or activity there, but because this is for high Sierra and alpine plants, they're not terribly showy except for in the middle of summer and onward, and then they go dormant. But our botanic garden has the largest collection of plants from the Sierra Nevada outside the Sierra Nevada. No one else can do as many of the Sierran plants as we can. And it's partially because of our location, but partially because of things that we do, like the crevice garden. And we have, again, expert plant people like Michael to take care of and actually make the collections in the wild with permits. Another part of the Sierran section that Michael built with others is our granite rock garden. This is older and much more established, but it doesn't create the long, cool crevice conditions that keep the root systems cool, but the tops and the crowns of the plants dry, which the crevice garden is excellent for. Plus, I should go back and just point this out more. Whoops, wrong way, sorry. Each one of those crevices are quite large. I mean, they're narrow, but they're deep. Some of them are over 4 feet deep. And so you can customize the soil mix. You can also do it so that it retains more water, it drains faster, all kinds of things. So each one of these crevices could be something completely different from what's next to it if Michael wanted to do that. But moving ahead, another one of our special rock gardens is our serpentine bog / rock garden. California has lots of unusual substrates that restrict plant growth or enable only a certain subset of plants to grow there. Serpentine is our state rock, and it also is highly restrictive to many exotic plants as well as many native plants. So the flora that's evolved to take advantage of serpentine soils and serpentine situations is quite unique to our state and many endemics. So Joe Dahl, our retired Botanic Garden supervisor, had created this and finished it off in 2017, the year he actually retired. So he got the very first part of it planted, but then Ben Anderson has been the person in charge of it since then. Again, a very unique area for our state and for the Botanic Garden. That's the just rock garden part of it with all the serpentine boulders or sub boulders and some of the early blooming plants. And then back in 2014, the Botanic Garden received a large gift from the Piedmont, oh shoot, I should have written this down, Piedmont Garden Club. And it enabled us to redo our desert section nearly completely. Some of the most important focal point beds. And this is sort of the work a year or two later after some of the plantings had gotten established. And here's just a larger view of that area very early on. You can see some of these things like this are put in for the winter months to keep plants either drier or a little bit warmer, depending on what kind of structure we use. You can see them over here, over there. And again, that's just because our winters can be colder and wetter than many places in Southern California. Oops, and I think I'm almost done. That's just another view of it. And yes, I think that is about it. So the Botanic Garden is at the intersection of Wildcat Canyon Road and South Park Drive in Tilden Regional Park in the Berkeley Hills. As you all likely know, South Park Drive gets closed by us at the Park District for the newt migration during the winter. And so you'll have to come a different way, either Golf Course Road or Shasta Road, because Wildcat Canyon Road is still closed after Inspiration Point due to that landslide over on the Orinda side several years ago. It'll probably still be another year or two before they begin to reconstruct that landslide area of Wildcat Canyon Road. So that's it. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask.
Wow, thank you. That's really fascinating. I'm going to ask you to pause for everybody to take a moment here. We're going to do some closing slides and acknowledgments, and then we'll reopen again for more discussion. So keep some questions coming here. And so I want to thank everyone for coming to Lakeside Chat number 46 tonight. And we're looking forward to seeing you again in October. You'll get information from us. Special thanks to Bart for a fascinating presentation. To the East Bay Regional Park District, congratulations on the 90th anniversary. To our youth groups that we work with, the Lake Merritt Boating Center, Adopt a Spot, Lake Merritt Institute, Measure DD, Climate Action Corps Fellows, and all of Oakland. Coming up, on October 4th, there will be Lakeside Chat number 47, Mushrooms of Lake Merritt, bringing back Damon Ty, a wonderful presenter, and just vast knowledge and enthusiasm for fungi. And so he'll be talking to us, getting us ready for the damper season so that we can appreciate the mushrooms of Lake Merritt. California Biodiversity Day is actually starting this Sunday and goes for a week. Observations that appear on iNaturalist will be included in this project. On September 31st, Rotary Nature Center Friends will be celebrating Creek to Bay Day at the Sailboat House Beach. This is the open beach. It's a demonstration shoreline that was created by Measure DD and finished in 2016. And we'll be working there, planting some plants, pulling out some non-natives, and looking for insects, and otherwise exploring biodiversity. And of course, picking up trash. Stewardship work days are usually once a month, and details will appear on our Facebook page. We want to remind everyone that October is the Gardens at Lake Merritt's the Autumn Lights Festival, and if you go to their website, you can purchase a ticket. They sell out really quickly, so hopefully you'll get yours soon. We've been doing Creek to Bay Day at the Sailboat House March now for a number of years, and it's evolved quite a bit, and we're excited about the changing plant cover and different species that are winners and losers, and how we can involve young people, especially in planting some plants and watering them so that they will be around as demonstrations. Okay, Lakeside Chats are rebroadcast every Sunday evening by the City of Oakland KTOP TV from 6 to 7 p.m. The first two Sundays of every month are devoted to golden oldies. We have now 46 programs to choose from, and you can go to our playlist and find some wonderful programs for anything that you're interested in. This is the last two Sundays of the month will show the most recent Lakeside Chat that has been undergone some light editing by our producer Rob Lamone to make it flow, and those are also really fun to watch. If you enjoy what we do, please consider making a donation to Rotary Nature Center Friends. We have a donation button on our webpage. You can pay with PayPal or a credit card. The activities that we do require materials and instruments, plants. We like to take young people out on the water with the Lake Merritt Boating Center, and that is a little investment as well. So we appreciate support. This is a picture of our website and the location of the donation button. We want to thank especially the Frederick E. Hart Foundation for Educational Opportunity for supporting these Lakeside Chats and all of our other activities. We want to thank our many volunteers, program participants, and partners in our work that we do. Our producer is Rob Lamone. We have been supported by the Lake Merritt Institute, the San Francisco Elks Lodge number 3, and many, many people. Would like to acknowledge Kirsten Furman, who's done artwork, including the beautiful banners that you see along Bellevue. She helped me sign those and format them. It did the original design, and she also is going to do another Lake Merritt wildlife calendar for us for 2025. So that will be coming up. We thank everybody for coming tonight and for joining in our Lakeside Chat. And please come by in our locations where we work. We're usually at the Sailboat House Marsh and in the vicinity of the Lake Merritt Boating Center docks. We love the gardens at Lake Merritt, and we go there to visit as well. And of course, all of the wonderful birds and the wonderful community of birders that helps people connect with and understand the community of living things at Lake Merritt. And so I think that brings us to the end of the slides. And now I want to thank you all for coming, and we can reopen for some more questions. Thank you so much, Bart. I have a question from Anthony. Do you have any problems with invasive plants in the garden, or are you able to control and eradicate any when they appear?
Every garden and every gardener knows you will always have weeds. And yes, we have weeds. Because we're surrounded by all of Tilden Park plus the Brazil Room lawn, we do get a variety of weeds, some of which are problematic. I mean, like Earharta erecta, the Earharta grass, that's everywhere. We get that too. And we just keep our eyes open for new things and identify them. And if they're not native, we try to get rid of them as soon as possible so that we don't build up a seed bank.
Yeah, it's striking how you were talking about the seed banks having possibly able to put create individuals or have individuals might wake up after a long period of time of being seeds in the seed bank.
Yes, actually, there's a
Yeah.
real good example of that on Guadalupe Island, which is a 99 square mile island. At one point, there were over 100,000 goats on that island. So if you divide that out, I think it's 10,000 goats per acre or per mile, a phenomenal amount. And that they denuded the island, and that it had been botanized right around when the goats were introduced and well documented. But after all the goats were removed, about now I think it's about 15 to maybe close to 20 years ago now, within 2 years, a ceanothus or California wild lilac, that had never been found or documented on the island, started showing up at a variety of locations at the north end of the island. It had to have been in a soil seed bank for over 100 years and still germinated and came up and successfully flowered. When I visited there in 2010, we saw lots of them around, and they were all in full bloom in May.
That's just amazing. Is that so? Has anybody looked at individual plants and noticed? I mean, is that something that parent plants do? That they create a variety of different offspring that wake up at different times?
Some are better at it than others. I mean, some plants are strictly fire followers. If you think of plants like many of our bush mallows and our tree poppy, Dendromecon rigida, usually you just see them for about 3 to 5 years after fire, and then they go away back into the soil seed bank, waiting for the next big fire, and then they respond very quickly and grow large with all the nutrients released by the fires. But it's just their reproductive strategy. There are also a lot of annual plants that do the same thing. A bunch of our phacelias, some of our native snapdragons, quite a few plants that have this adaptation to our extreme climate.
Wow. Are there plants that don't have it, that are just like strictly once and that's it?
Yep, many. And when you think about it, probably many of them are more water related. If you think of things like cattails and willows, they typically have very short-lived seeds. And if they don't land in water or very, very moist soil, they're just die after like 5 days, and that they can't really be stored. Other things that are really high in oils or fats, like acorns, walnuts, They're a one season only thing. If they don't germinate and grow, they're pretty much just rot. Same thing with buckeyes. Buckeyes are big seeds, lots of starch. And yeah, if they don't come up and grow, they just rot away. Well, there was a question about the fauna at the garden.
Yes.
And that, yes, we actually have quite a bit. We have an extensive bird list. And interestingly, there have been no quail in our area for quite a while because there was just too much cover. But just this afternoon, a covey of quail were in the garden itself. And I think it's probably because of some of the fuels management that's being done along South Park Drive, which is creating a lot more open space that quail like. Additionally, we do have, because of climate change, we have more snakes than we've had. Over the last about 3 years, rattlesnakes have been found in the garden several times. We do catch them and generally relocate them outside the garden to adjacent parts of Tilden, but we don't like having them in the garden where our visitors could inadvertently come across them. We also have mountain king snakes and gopher snakes, and we have had documented Alameda whip snake, which is federally listed. That was found just a couple of years ago. And racer snakes in the garden. We have lizards, the California alligator lizard, various fence lizards, the blue-tailed skinks. And as far as mammals, we have too many vertebrate pests, as I consider them. We have mice, we have voles, we have moles, we have like just about everywhere, we have rats on occasion, and we have wood rats. We have river otters visiting the garden, oftentimes in the winter. They'll come up Wildcat Creek. And we have western pond turtles that appear in our pond. Most recently, a couple of years ago, one of those appeared and was just staying for a while. And we let our stewardship colleagues know. And they were quite interested, came, caught it, and found that it was a new undocumented individual within the Wildcat Creek watershed. And I think there's only something like 15 in the watershed. So it was pretty important to have a new individual just show up out of who knows where. We have had yellow-legged frogs, but not for quite a number of years now. We have chorus frogs. We have the rainbow trout are in the creek. And we have the white-banded crayfish, which are from the northern parts of the state, but somehow they got into the garden, into Wildcat Creek throughout. And that's probably most of the things. Oh, we also have quite a number of different bat species. The garden, because it has such a variety of vegetation cover and vegetation types, and a lot of edges and lots of water, both the creek and the pond and some moist areas, we are sort of a biological hotspot for the park district. And they realized that when they were doing bat surveys, And so now we are a bat monitoring location for the district. And they said that they can determine what species they are, what sex they are, and whether they're juveniles or a female carrying a juvenile. They can determine all these things just by recording their vocalizations.
That is fascinating. I know at one time we were going to have there was going to be a program at the Rotary Nature Center way back when, looking at the calls of bats. That would be fascinating to try to do a lakeside chat with sounds. A little hard to do a visual thing with sounds, but
yes,
very cool, very, very cool.
And we do have a lot of raptors. I mean, we have great horned owls that are resident. We have screech owls. We have Cooper's hawks, red-tailed hawks, and a variety of other things that come and go.
Oh, it's amazing. And we loved your pipevine swallowtail caterpillars. It was totally overwhelming when we were visiting in the summer. That, I mean, the students were frankly grossed out, but they were just
yeah. Well, and again, we have so many of them at the garden. And interestingly, I mean, pipevine is found in the Sierra foothills, and then the East Bay 2 counties are as far south as they go in the Coast Ranges. And San Bruno Mountain is as far as they go south on the peninsula. So we're at the edge of their distribution, and that they had actually gone or thought to have gone locally extinct in city of San Francisco, but they planted a bunch of pipevines out and then got permission to collect some caterpillars at the Botanic Garden and relocate them to the city. And they now have reestablished a pipevine swallowtail population there.
Wow. That's amazing. You did it so fast. Wow. Because it takes a while for the pipevine to get established. It's
yes. Yeah. It's one of those. There are a number of California native plants that I think of as 3-year plants. It's the first year you plant it and it doesn't do anything at all. The second year it grows just a little bit and you think you got a dud. And then the third year it just takes off and grows really fast. And that's typically what pipevine does in most gardens. Sugarbush is very similar. And lemonade berries, another one. There are these things that tend to be very permanent parts of your garden, but they'll take a while to get going.
Well, yeah, I'm hoping. I know I should go. Please raise your hand if you have a question, because I may not have seen it. Or okay, so I'm going to go to gallery view. Raise your hand if you have a question, so I can. And you're welcome to ask it yourself if you would like. Let's see. So we took actually 3 groups of students up to the Botanical Garden this summer. It was very hot, but they just were overwhelmed. It was so beautiful, and they did hang out a lot at the end of the road in the down by the redwoods and whatever. But one of them remarked about the similarity in the color of the Sierra plants in the rock garden, the granite garden, and I think the crevice garden. Does that relate to any adaptation that those plants have, or is it just the way they are?
It's probably some of both. Some of it is probably just random, but others it's very specific. I mean, it's that the plants that are usually found in granite have to be able to take a lot of reflected light and oftentimes heat from granite. And that with the dark rock that we've used for the crevice garden, same thing. And part of that is deliberate on our part, wanting there to be warmth, because when you think about the Sierra and even the High Sierra, the ground doesn't really freeze deeply. It may freeze right at the surface, but it's not like the Arctic where it'll freeze a foot down, or, in parts of high Colorado or Wyoming where it will freeze, the soil will freeze down over a foot, and that you have to do all kinds of installation of pipes and so on. The Sierra doesn't typically get that cold. Part of it is, I think, because of our Mediterranean climate and the deserts on the other side. And so the plants are a bit differently adapted to alpine-like conditions in the Sierra than most other high elevation plants. So a lot of them tend to be gray. Some of them are very bright green, usually the carex or carices, the sedges. Almost all of those tend to be brighter green and are usually more associated with melting water or sometimes just rock crevices. So there's a huge amount of native sedges in the High Sierra. It's probably the biggest genus out there, or up there, as far as number of different kinds.
Katie, did you see Mark's hand?
No, I did not. Yes, Mark, please. Would you like to ask your question, or why don't
Yes,
you
I would.
unmute yourself? Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah, my wife and I frequently walk on Nimitz Way up off of out of Inspiration Point, and we've noticed that there's a grove of sequoia trees just before the 1 mile mark. They don't look so good. Do you anticipate any problems with your sequoia trees in the garden?
Well, I think you're referring to the giant sequoias, the
Yes.
Sierra redwoods. Yes.
Yes.
Um, Ours are in better shape because they get more water. If you think about it, the Sierra, if you remember way back in one of my early slides that showed the Sierra and the Clamacyscue in a different color than the Californian parts of the state, it's because the Sierra usually gets summer water, whereas the rest of the state usually doesn't. I mean, what I always tell people or ask people, you've been up backpacking or hiking in the Sierra, and what happens almost every afternoon? You get rained on. And that doesn't happen down here. So those trees on the Nimitz Trail are not getting enough water that they would like. Ours are getting water. They are getting stressed by the heat we get on occasion. We have had the top of a couple of them, of our trees, actually die because they haven't been able to pump enough water up to the top. But we've had Eric Fulmer out to evaluate what was going on up at the tops and then clean them up. And he said it really seems to be more just a relation to drought. And there's not a lot more we can do about that. It's also why the couple of them up by the Brazil building look so big and full. It's because they're right there where they get lots of additional water. And same thing with coast redwood. They want lots of extra water too. Many people think that the East Bay Hills were full of redwoods, and they weren't. There was just some around Redwood Park and that area, and down around Canyon. But those were all logged out early on, and what we're seeing is second growth and even third growth trees in Redwood Park and Round Canyon and so forth. But that as far north as we are in Tilden, redwood trees were never thought to be native there. And so we water ours, and we have that whole system now where we actually have a small well that operates off of solar power that pumps water up to tanks that then we use to water the redwood section of the garden. Because ideally, that water is completely untreated. And so redwood forests and so forth should have a lot more mosses and lichens in them. And that treated water from East Bay mud or any municipal water source is treated with chloramines or other things which kill off mosses other than weedy mosses and lichens. So over the years, you should be able to notice a difference in the understory look and feel of the Botanic Gardens redwood grove, coast redwood grove. There should be a lot more selaginellas and other mosses or true mosses and more of a lichen flora down low in that part of the garden as well.
Great, thanks.
Sure.
Katie, I think it's Diane that, because I just lost the
Oh,
image.
yes, I see
but
your hand raised, Diane. Would you like to unmute yourself and ask a question? Okay, we need to unmute.
I'm looking for the button. Okay, so as I listened to Bart's cataloging of all the things that we have in the garden, I thought of a few more things. The first few years when I was a docent, we were blessed with families of, I guess they were gray foxes. And so the pups would use our tile irrigation system as a protective runway, as it were, to get from wherever they spent the night to come out underneath some of the bushes down by Wildcat Creek. So that was a lot of fun when we had them, but the roadway was too much of a problem for them. People said they were getting killed that way. Now, fauna, do we get to it? Well, you left out the coyote, Bart.
Yes.
I have not personally seen them, but the gardeners see them first thing in the morning, right?
Well, and I see them oftentimes late because I'm usually there late. And actually, yes, I should have mentioned several larger animals. We do have
turkeys.
Yeah, well, we try to keep the turkeys out.
I know.
And we've been pretty successful at it by keeping the gates closed. So yes, if you come to the garden, the gates are closed and there are signs on them saying, we're open, but please just let yourself in and close the gate behind you to keep turkeys out. The turkeys can't seem to figure out that if they flew over the fence, they would be in the garden. They only have come in through the gates, both entrances. So that's why we started keeping the gates closed this year when we were seeing them come in daily. And we would shoo them out and they'd come back through the gate. But again, never figured out they could fly in. And we don't want them to realize that.
I was just going to say, they haven't figured out how to work their way into a municipal rose garden near where I live. So what we don't want to do is have trees so close to the road that they can get a running start that lets them fly up over our fences.
Yeah.
That's how they get around. At any rate, the other thing, you didn't mention insects. And we have an amazing collection of native bees. And well, you mentioned butterflies, but we have an amazing collection of native bees because we wouldn't have pollination without them. So
yeah, and again, to fill in a little bit more, we do have a lot of coyotes at the garden, but usually they come early or come late. A whole pack came in together about 10 days ago. I'm not sure, I didn't see them come into the garden, but they were coming down the service road, the dirt service road in the garden, a group of them. At each path intersection, one would peel off because there were about 6 of them. And and the rabbits and other small animals are a lot more skittish than they were early this summer when they would just lie out on the grass, sprawled out. That doesn't happen much right now. And that the other thing that we have are bobcats. None of the staff has ever seen a bobcat at the or a mountain lion at the garden. But we know we've had both, and we know that we have what we think is a resident bobcat because when we had the night cameras up, we would get the same bobcat every night. And so it's just very skittish about being out and about when people are. But we think that the den is in the canyon section of the garden. And the other thing that happened to the foxes were the coyotes ate them. So if you have a lot of coyotes, you do not have very many foxes, and that's very unfortunate because the foxes are really good at hunting the mice and the rats and the voles. The coyotes are more scavengers, and they do hunt, but not as successfully as the foxes. And we do have a lot of different bees, yes, and bumblebees. The Park District uses the Botanic Garden to train people on bumblebee identification. Now that there's a federally listed bumblebee in the area. And we have a bumblebee that is thought to be very rare. I think it's something like the fog bumblebee. And again, we've got to be at the edge of its distribution since we don't get a lot of fog anymore. Oh, and then I should have mentioned that there are 2 well-known botanic gardens in the Berkeley Hills. There's the Regional Parks Botanic Garden where it's free parking and free entry. And there's the UC Berkeley Botanical Garden, which you pay to park and you pay to enter. All of the people that live in Alameda and Contra Costa County pay to have the Park District, which pays to have the Botanic Garden. So everyone's already paid, is how I usually frame it to people. And so everyone is welcome to come up and enjoy the garden. We're only closed on 3 days of the year, and it's Thanksgiving Day, Christmas Day, and New Year's Day. Every other day we're open from 8:30 to 5 during the winter, and most of the spring and most of the fall. And during the summer, we're open till 5:30.
Well, Bart, is there public transportation up to the garden?
That has been a problem since the pandemic. It used to be that on weekends there was a bus, an AC transit bus that went to the Brazil building, which is just right next door to the Botanic Garden. And so people could take that and then just walk down the grassy slope to the garden's back gate on Anzaview Road. And many people did. But since the pandemic, AC Transit did away with that transit line. And now the nearest that you can take public transportation to is the intersection of Grizzly Peak Boulevard and Shasta. which is by that fire station that's up there. And that's a bit of a walk to the garden, and there's not a sidewalk.
Yeah. Yeah. Well worth making it up there if you can.
Yes.
Really great to get young people up there. They're just so impressed, and we're going to work on trying to get more groups up there to enjoy it, because it was just amazing. We had a lot of rabbits, cottontails.
Yes, well, there are too many of those in my but there seem to be less lately because of the activity of the coyotes and other critters, I guess. Oh, and I see that Anthony typed into the chat, fog belt bumblebee bombus caliginosus. And another question is, do you have problems with ground squirrels, native ground squirrels? No, we don't. We do have gophers, and we do have the exotic red squirrels are seemingly moving in more and more. But we don't have ground squirrels, or we have not so far.
Well, I thank you again so much.
Sure. Oh, I see one other question here. Do we make any effort to establish and or attract pollinators, or let the flora that you have generally attract pollinators? And that, yes, it's, we don't typically have not done anything specific to attract pollinators, but the fact that we're a California native plant botanic garden, which just grows California native plants, does encourage all of the native flora or fauna of all sizes to take advantage of what we plant. So we do get all kinds of pollinators, lots of different kinds of wasps, lots of different kinds of moths, lots of different kinds of bee flies and different sorts of flies, all kinds of things. You can see some postings to iNaturalist on a lot of these oddball insects. One of our ISAs, interpreter student aides, Diana Wall, oftentimes posts the dead bugs that she finds in the glass house that are attracted to the lights. And a lot of them have been of great interest to entomologists.
Another good source is the Insect Sciences Museum. This is connected with, well, it's very active throughout California, and also people from all over discuss and identify insects. It's really a great resource for people. So we will include that in a post chat email. I know a number of wonderful links and sources of information have gone by, and I will try to get that out to you. Rob is going to take the recording the rough recording that we've made and condense it down into 1 hour for the KTOP, but also we put the whole thing up on our playlist, and so all of these discussions will be available to so thank you to everybody for contributing to that. And let's see. Any more questions?
Yeah, Lisa.
Oh, Lisa,
Klein.
go for it, Lisa. Would you like to unmute yourself?
Yeah. Hi, I have a question. My name's Alan. I have a question about the coyotes. Are you making any effort, and how do you remove them if you can?
We don't. They're not a problem in the garden. They were, well, I should backtrack a little bit. Early this year, as part of the pandemic, a bunch of people were feeding coyotes over at the golf course,
Mm.
and they ended up coming over to the Botanic Garden and started following people around, which freaked out some of our visitors and some of our staff. But the park district public safety folks went over to the golf course people and asked them to stop and explained why. And they did. And so the coyotes stopped following people around in the garden early this year. We haven't had any issues since then. Generally, the coyotes in the garden have been very skittish, and it's typically rare that visitors actually see them. Like I said, staff sees them that are there early, and me being there oftentimes late, I oftentimes see them as well. But usually our visitors don't. And they've not been a problem to the point where we've had to do any control of them at the garden. I can't speak for other parts of the park district. I don't know enough about what they can and have done.
How do they get in?
Interestingly, at the Botanic Garden I worked in for 24 years in Southern California, Rancho Santa Ana Botanic Garden in Claremont, California, which is now the California Botanic Garden. There are a lot of coyotes there, and they had the same kind of perimeter fence as the Botanic Garden, chain link with then the barbed wire, 3 rows of barbed wire up at the top. What I saw coyotes do at Rancho was shocking. I would just watch them. They would run right at the fence, and then they would run straight up the fence and straight over the other side. They didn't stop for the barbed wire. It didn't deter them in any way, shape, or form. And then they would just keep going in the line they were going. It was rather eye-opening to see. I mean, it was all crossing the fence took them maybe 10 seconds or less. It was just instant. It was so fast.
Thank you.
Very adaptable. Man.
Yes,
Yeah.
incredibly adaptable. And I'm sure it's because their paws could probably get purchased in the chain link. If it was a slick wall or something, maybe not, but chain link was no problem.
Well, you can tell how much everybody loves the Botanical Garden. And even if you're tuning in from afar, as I know Anthony may be, it's just like, it's really always great to see a resource like that being loved and being made available to people. And so thank you so much for sharing this. And I hope everybody will make it up to see the garden. The newt event is amazing, but it's always amazing. So
yes, well, and we do have both kinds of newts, California newts and the rough skin newts. The Park District Fisheries folks always do a survey of the fish between Lake Anza and into the Botanic Garden. It's one of the areas that they do typically every year. And then they also do some sampling in our pond, which is where all of the newts go to breed. They were a bit later this year than usual, and so all of the newt, what are they called? Fs, EFTS, the juvenile newts, were all the rough-skinned newts. All the California newts had already left. And they said that the California newts tend to mature and move on earlier. And that we do have permanent residents of adult, both kinds of newts, in our pond. And again, our pond is filled with water from the from the well, the untreated water. So again, it's why we have so many interesting critters in the pond.
Yes.
No chlorine, no additive, no fluoride, no nothing, just as it comes out of the ground.
Yeah, it is fascinating just to watch the newts that are in the pond. And my grandson, who's like 8, spent a long time. I couldn't pull him away. And there was an older boy who was trying to photograph them, and it was just like clearly very absorbing. So I thought,
Yes.
look, he's heard about axolotls with the external gills, and he was just he thought, wow, it's almost like that.
It's amazing. We also have a lot of different kinds of dragonflies and darners and damselflies, dragonflies, etc. And many of them live and breed in the pond as well, the juvenile phase.
Wow. Well, yeah, that's totally amazing. We're getting excited. I got a text from somebody. We're getting excited about being able to do a survey of fish in Lake Merritt. I don't think that has been done, and it's really quite a place. We had a salmon run 2 years ago. We had Chinook salmon come in.
Really?
Yeah, we did.
That's impressive.
But we were told we were not able to even touch them. So we were able to call out the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and they processed a couple of them. But now that we have our permit, we will be able to take them out, look at them, even dissect them, and show them to the public, and then put everything back in the lake and take samples for scientists who are studying the genetics and so forth. So really excited about that, and that's really interesting about your study of the fish in the pond.
Yeah, well, the most recent issue of Manzanita, the Friends quarterly publication out of the Botanic Garden, was all on, I think we were calling it in-house Watery Worlds at the Botanic Garden. So it was Wildcat Creek and the pond.
Very cool. And that's available on the website?
It will be. Usually it's at least 6 months to a year before a new issue is put up, just because we want people to be Friends members and get it immediately. But it will be out there. It's gotten a lot of attention from a lot of people, and it's been a very popular topic, should I say.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. You know so much, and it's just been a real pleasure to have you join us for Lakeside Chats.
Sure. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so we may send you a question or two if they come lately.
Okay.
And really appreciate. We'll send links to people from the chat, so that we'll try to do that soon, so that you can follow up on some of the resources that were mentioned, and including the docent tours at the park and other events happening at the East Bay Regional Parks. So
yeah, actually I should have mentioned that too. The docent tours are on the weekends, the free ones, and they're at 2 o'clock on Saturday and at 11 o'clock and 2 o'clock on Sundays. And then they're at 2 o'clock on holidays. And they're all free. It's just show up, and you can also tell the docent what you would like to see or know about, or they will just give you a general tour of the garden.
Right. Great. Well, want to wish everybody have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. It looks like it's going to be a little hot, but maybe cooling down a bit. If you're in the vicinity of Lake Merritt, check us out on Creek to Bay Day and check out our little piece of shoreline. And there's always wonderful things happening in the gardens at Lake Merritt. And we're hoping to continue all of the wonderful learning and stewardship that's going on. So
yes, and that the other thing should mention that's very California centric. Monday is a holiday for all of us East Bay Regional Park District people because
Admissions.
it's Admission Day, when California was admitted to the U.S.
oh, wow. Okay. Well, wishing everybody a happy Admissions Day as well.
Yes. So we will have a docent tour on Monday at 2:00
Ooh.
because it's a holiday.
Yes. How wonderful. Well, that's a good tip. Okay, everybody. Well, I think it's probably time to say good night and to everybody give applaud for Bart and to everybody who's joining the conversation. This was really fun.
Sure.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate everybody here tonight. And, see you soon. Okay.
Bye
Take
now.
care. Bye-bye. Bye.